When does a story turn into a legend? In September 1985, a team of researchers led by oceanographer Robert Ballard made history when they discovered the wreckage of the Titanic. 73 years had passed since the unsinkable ship disappeared into the Atlantic Ocean, taking 1,503 souls with her. The extraordinary nature of the moment wasn't lost on Maury Yeston, Tony Award-winning composer of the musical 9. The discovery captivated the world, and the Titanic's cultural significance made him ponder if it could work on the stage. Thus began the journey of Titanic the Musical, a promising Broadway prospect that became a multi-million-dollar fiasco. This is a story about persistence in the face of catastrophe, and how inspiration can rise from the most unexpected of places. But more than anything, it's a story of hope when everything goes wrong. I'm Brendan with Wait in the Wings, and this is a quick history of Titanic the Musical. The idea of a Titanic musical wasn't a new one. Meredith Willson's Music Man follow-up, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, opened in 1960, ran for 2 years, and became a movie by 1965. But composer Maury Yeston wanted a fresh perspective to make his musical more relevant. Titanic sank in 1912, at the dawn of the Second Industrial Revolution and the 20th century. A century built on dreams that was fast approaching its end. Yeston started his research about the ship shortly after the discovery of the wreckage in 1985. However, early concepts for the musical changed drastically after January 1986, when the Challenger space shuttle broke apart after launch, taking with it the lives of all 7 crew members and civilians on board. The reason? A failed O-ring, designed to stop fuel leaks. The situation drew somber similarities to the Titanic. For Yeston, mankind's hubris and blind faith in technology proved just as relevant in 1986 as they did in 1912. Yeston suddenly found his reason to make the Titanic musical. Soon after, he was pulled away from Titanic and brought on to help save the show Grand Hotel. Did he pull it off?
I'm going to see it twice more.
When?
As soon as I could get tickets. My husband works in this area.
Okay.
On Grand Hotel's opening night, Yeston ran into his writer friend, Peter Stone, and the two started discussing future projects. Yeston mentioned he was composing a new Titanic musical. Stone, proficient in the art of historical storytelling, responded that he always wanted to write a musical based on the doomed ocean liner, and asked if he could work on the project with Yeston. It was Stone's work on the musical 1776 that made Yeston agree. In his eyes, if Stone could convince audiences the Declaration of Independence might not get signed, he could also make them think the Titanic might not sink. Stone officially came on board. The two dove headfirst into the research, deciding early on to tell the stories of a few real passengers, minus that of unsinkable Molly Brown.
Oh, God!
Yeston and Stone's initial research specifically revolved around Titanic's strict social structure, and how life or death literally hinged on the clothes somebody wore. Despite the social differences, the duo realized something all 3 classes held in common: dreams. For third class, it was the dream of a new life in America. For second, the dream of socializing with higher classes thanks to the spoils of the Industrial Revolution. And for the first class members, often the product of railroad companies or oil barons, it was the dream that their empires would never end. But then, the Titanic disappeared into the bottom of the ocean and took many of those dreams with it. The pair continued researching and developing the show over several years, eventually recruiting Yeston's friend, Michael Brown, to produce. Described as a millionaire graduate of Dalton and Harvard who dressed like a bum, Brown was a well-connected businessman who knew everyone in show business. Connections aside, he had never produced anything in his life. This startling fact led to the recruitment of a second Michael David, who was a member of the Dodgers, the Broadway producing partnership behind Big River and the 1992 revival of Guys and Dolls. Initially unsure of a Titanic musical, Michael David's tone shifted after Yeston presented the whole show in his apartment living room. David confidently agreed to raise 50% of the show's capitalization. To round out the team, they attempted to recruit multiple high-profile directors, including Trevor Nunn and Hal Prince. Nunn turned down the job after drinking 2 bottles of wine in Yeston's living room, while Prince told Yeston to just direct it himself. Eventually, they landed on Richard Jones, a British director whose resume consisted mainly of operas and plays, plus a couple revivals of Into the Woods. Not only did he look like a good choice, he was also one of the only people crazy enough to say yes. Titanic's tragic story is one of life and death, wealth and poverty, sacrifice and cowardice. As such, it's long been a subject of morbid curiosity and an irresistible source for film, television, and books. The first movie on Titanic came out just 29 days after the sinking in 1912 and starred Dorothy Gibson, a silent film actress who survived the real sinking. Titanic represented a defining moment of the early 1900s, and the discovery of the wreck in 1985 led to a Titanic frenzy in the 90s. IMAX released the underwater exploration documentary Titanica, and CBS aired a 4-hour movie starring Tim Curry, the former sparking Terminator director James Cameron's desire to put his own blockbuster spin on the story. That March, the movie became the talk of Hollywood. Over budget and off schedule, it looked to be on a collision course with failure. The same could be said for Titanic the Musical. Much like James Cameron's movie, the musical's budget ballooned past initial estimates, eventually totaling $10 million. It was a daunting number for a Broadway show in the 90s, but one that Yeston felt confident the Dodgers, and especially the well-connected Michael Brown, would have no problem hitting. Instead, the production hit an unexpected iceberg. Producer Michael Brown was noticeably absent from the first rehearsal for Titanic, something that troubled Maury Yeston. As detailed in Singular Sensation, Yeston went to second producer Michael David and said, "The only way Michael Brown wouldn't be here is that he's dead." After a number of calls to Brown went unanswered, the musical stage manager headed to his apartment. Eventually, the stage manager and the building superintendent broke down the door to search the place. That's when they found Brown in the bathroom, slumped over on the toilet, dead. It soon came to light that Brown's entire existence was a lie. He'd never attended Dalton or Harvard and was oftentimes homeless in New York. Unsurprisingly, with this new knowledge, he'd raised none of the $5 million he promised. Suddenly, the Dodgers were on the hook to raise the entire $10 million. The saving grace came from, of all places, reality TV show producer Joop van den Ende, the eventual creator of shows like Deal or No Deal, Wipeout, and Fear Factor. Van den Ende's sizable contribution helped Titanic the Musical reach its first preview on March 29, 1997, with hopes to open on April 11th, the same date Titanic set sail for New York. That dream was scrapped after one of the worst previews in Broadway history. The real Titanic took 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink. Titanic the Musical took nearly 4. The culprit? The set. One of the biggest reasons for the lofty price tag, the set wasn't even that elaborate at first glance. Designer Stuart Lang chose to present fragments of the ship as opposed to the full ship itself. This kept in line with the abstract vision of director Richard Jones. The real technical difficulties started once the ship needed to sink. Using the secret weapon of 1980s and 90s design engineers everywhere, hydraulic lifts tilted the 3-story set a full 45 degrees. Approximately the same angle the real Titanic reached before the ship forcibly split in two. Though historically accurate, this proved unsafe for the 41 actors on stage. Not only did they need to keep their grip, they also had to dodge furniture rushing towards them. The tilt was ultimately reduced from 45 degrees to 30 degrees. Furniture was bolted onto the stage, and actors received shoe grips and guidance from a movement coordinator to traverse the still steep angle. To kick off the first preview, director Richard Jones took to the stage at the Lunt-Fontanne Theater with an apology for what was about to happen, warning the audience that the crossing might be rough. Jones was a man of his word. The show's momentum repeatedly ground to a halt, thanks to malfunction after malfunction, culminating in the boat failing to sink, and the cast singing the final number in front of the curtain. Traditionally, the Dodgers preferred opening a show in Boston or Washington, D.C., before offering it to the infamously fickle New York crowds. This often gave them time to iron out all the kinks before Broadway. Titanic was just too big, both financially and physically, to do this, leaving every embarrassing faux pas vulnerable to attack with zero privacy to make adjustments. This extended past the set and into the actual script, specifically the ending. Titanic the Musical follows nearly 20 different characters, from crew, first, second, and third class. Juggling so many characters meant the lifeboat sequence at the end became incredibly complicated, with all the characters talking over each other in a collection of mini-scenes. The massive bodies also made it difficult to keep track of who was saying what, which wasn't ideal considering the entire 40-page sinking sequence was spoken dialogue. No singing. The converging stories just left audiences confused. What's more, Yeston realized audiences were forced to watch a scene knowing anyone who didn't get into a lifeboat was going to die. The moment didn't captivate, it horrified. During a late-night shower after a particularly taxing preview, Yeston had a breakthrough. He thought of the time one of his kids asked him who Richard Nixon was. He needed to find a way to describe all the horrible reasons Nixon was a bad man, but in a way a child could understand and tolerate. As the morning light came through, Yeston condensed the 40-minute scene into a 15-minute song called "We'll Meet Tomorrow," in which a mother tells her son what's happening while also shielding him from the horrors of the situation. It went into the show for that night's preview. When opening night came on April 23, 1997, the audience was excited to finally see the huge disaster they'd read about in news articles. But after watching the ship successfully sink to Yeston's new song, any negative biases vanished. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, and the crowd erupted into a standing ovation. It looked to Yeston that Titanic the Musical might just survive. It wasn't so cut and dry for the critics. Reviews were mixed at best. The general consensus amongst all of them found that the show wasn't horrible, but it wasn't incredible either. As Variety put it, the show navigates a middle course that veers clear of anything particularly memorable, a point the New York Times echoed by saying, "It feels like a singing blueprint, still waiting to achieve the third dimension." On paper, the show struggled financially for the first couple of weeks. Yet the actual number of ticket sales increased. The word of mouth was starting to spread, a slow burn that turned into a wildfire after the show earned 5 Tony nominations and a glowing endorsement from television host Rosie O'Donnell. After a rousing performance on her television show, Titanic's ticket sales jumped 200%. In all, Titanic the Musical ran on Broadway for 2 impressive years, partially due to its 5 Tony Award wins, including Best Musical, but mainly thanks to the release of James Cameron's multi-million-dollar epic 9 months later. The movie not only shattered box office records, it also became a cultural phenomenon that kept the curiosity about Titanic burning. As one of the most compelling and heartbreaking events in history, the myth surrounding Titanic still fascinates us today. Much was lost in the Atlantic on April 15, 1912. But the stories live on. Productions of Titanic the Musical continue to pop up 26 years later, most notably with an immersive staging where the scaffolding extended into the audience, and a production in the state of Georgia staged it with a set that actually sank into a bacteria-filled pond that caused one actor's tendon to burst. Definitely a cool effect, but what about the time Hal Prince and Maria Bjornsson set a 10-foot chandelier crashing above audiences' heads in 1986? Pulling off the phantom chandelier effect was no easy task. Click on this video to learn the smashing history behind one of the most iconic props in history.